Welcome everyone to the ordinary meeting of Council, went for Wednesday the 14th of April. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to their elders and the elders from other communities who may be here today. We also acknowledge all other people who have contributed to the rich diversity of this country. Councillor, could you upstand, please? I
declare that as Councillor of the Nararu City, I will undertake on every occasion to carry out my duties in the best interests of the community, and that my conduct shall maintain the standards of our Council Code of Conduct, so that I may faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in the Council by the people of the Nararu District.
I'll remind you, Council meetings are now recorded and streamed live. Behaviour at meetings is to be exemplary. If anyone has a conflict of interest under the Local Government Act of 2020, it must be declared now. Does anyone have any conflicts in the agenda?
Nothing.
Do we have any apologies?
Councillor Galarrete.
Thank you. Would someone like to move that Councillor Davis, Councillor Firth? All those in favour? That's carried. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. Someone like to move that they be accepted? Councillor Firth, Councillor King. All those in favour? Question time? No. We have one petition containing 597 signatures, which has been received requesting the Council acknowledge that human actions have contributed substantially to the increasing levels of greenhouse gases and declare a climate emergency. The recommendation is that the petition be received and a report be presented to the Planning and Development Committee. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Davis and Councillor O'Brien. All those in favour? Thank you. Record of committees. 8.1 Finance and Operation Committee. The recommendation that the report and recommendation of the Finance and Operations Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 7th of April be adopted is on page 11. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Davis and Councillor King. Would you like to speak, Councillor Davis? Councillor King.
No, thank you.
All those in favour? Carried. 8.2 Planning and Development Committee. Recommendations, the report and recommendations of the Planning and Development Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 7th of April will be adopted. That's on page 14. Move Councillor Hearn, seconded Councillor King. Like to speak, Councillor Hearn.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor King. All those in favour? Carried. 8.3 Assembly of Councillors, Advisory and External Committees. There's a list there of those meetings and committees, and the recommendation is that the report be noted on page 15. I'd like to move that. Councillor King and Councillor O'Brien. I'd like to speak, Councillor King.
No, thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All those in favour? That's carried. Item number 9, reports by officers. Authorisation and signing of documents.
Yep.
9.2, investment policy. Robert Barber.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Tonight presents one of our policies in regard to investing our cash that we do hold. We're in a good position to hold that. It's an existing policy that has served us well over recent years, but there is a recommendation to actually change some parts of it. In particular, the two issues to be changed is a recommendation that the limit for funds to be held with the Commonwealth Bank increase from $2.5 million to $4 million, just to enable us to handle the amount of funds we currently have at the moment, which I think totals around about $12 million. So that recommendation, I had a look at our cash flow today with the Finance Department. The suggested increase to the $4 million for our operating account at the Commonwealth Bank is probably a little bit light on. The councillors were of the mind, I would recommend that actually amount be increased to $6 million, and the amount to be held with A1 plus institutions be increased to $4 million, because the way we're going, we're actually running out of money to invest with A plus one, and we may have to look at going down to the next tier of A1. So I'll let councils consider that and ask me some questions if they like. That'll just ensure we've had a philosophy here of low risk investing, that we don't put it anywhere risky. But at the moment, as can be seen from the financial implication, interest rates are relatively low and it's difficult to get a good return. So our projected money has decreased from some $120,000 or $140,000 to $30,000. To help address that, it's also recommended that the term of our deposits be increased to 270 days, as detailed in the report. The actual so-called sweet spot for investment is above the existing policy. As can be seen from that, the 9-month term will allow us to maximise our rate increases. That increases from 180 days, 6 months, to 270 days, 9 months. As can be seen from the table on page 20, for example, if we went to a Westpac term deposit that had a 9-month date rather than a 6-month, we could increase our return by some 23%. So a very risk-free manoeuvre to change it from the 6 months to 9 months, and it has a fairly substantial return in regard to trying to maximise our cash holdings. So we are in a fortunate position. Previously, this policy has served us well because we haven't had a lot of cash. At the moment, mainly due to our grant funding, we do have a lot of cash, so there just has to be some adjustments made. But happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions, Mr. Barber? Councillor Kern?
Mr. Barber, could you please explain the difference of A1 plus and the one that you said that we may have to go down to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the A1 Plus is the top rank. There's the ranking system of different deposit-taking institutions, and the top four, the four big banks, are rated the A1 Plus. From there, you go down to the smaller institutions who haven't got quite that rating, but the big, the four banks are the ones that have been rated A1 Plus. So that's a rating agency that rates their financial strength and liquidity and overall, so they're the top of the tree.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Kern and Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just to follow up, I'd just like to ask the CEO, CEO, are you in favour with this change?
Through the chair, yes, fully in favour. We discussed it this afternoon. Obviously, it's coming on a late hour, but I think it'd be prudent of us as officers not to obviously advise the council to take this action.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis?
Sorry, that's nothing. Through the chair, Mr. Barber, I should know, but I can't recall. A1 is only the top four, and then you come down to another small number of institutions that are just A, aren't they?
Yep.
Question is, what we stayed with the four because they guarantee up to so much money. Can you remember what that money figure was? Is it like
The Australian government does guarantee.
the state government guarantees
Sorry,
each bank
the
how much
Australian
money?
government. It's nowhere near the amount we have invested. I think it's in the $400,000 or so. I don't think it's anywhere near the millions of dollars, but we can find that out, Mr. Chair.
If I may follow up question, I might be old-fashioned, but Mr. Barber, but would we be better worrying about the capital amount of money we actually have rather than the mere interest we're going to get on the money? So my question is, why don't we just leave it in A1s? Why do we want to drop back to A's and maybe B pluses, just to chase a tiny little bit of interest, which is not worth anything really? I'd rather have. I've seen too many institutions and too many one not far from here where they chased interest and actually lost everything. So my question is, wouldn't it be better just to look at keeping our nest egg together rather than looking at the A4s, the A pluses, rather than going into try and chase a bit more interest at the peril of maybe losing some.
Through you, Mr Chair, that has been the historic way we've done business here. The A1 plus banks are the ANZ, CBA, NAB and Westpac. Just the A1 are the second tier banks, which include Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, AMP, Macquarie Bank and Rural Bank. By increasing the limit we can have with each A1 plus institution, that'll help achieve that goal, Mr Chair, that we'll be able to invest more with A plus one. We won't even have to look at the A plus investment. So if we have the capacity to put all our money in A1 plus, then that's what we should do.
Thanks, Mr. Barber.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Barber? If not, the recommendation will read what now, Mr. Barber?
Mr Chair, if we could change the recommendation to read that the investment policy be adopted with an amendment of increasing the limit for the Commonwealth Bank to $4 million, $6 million, sorry, and other A1 plus institutions to $4 million.
And was there a change of the amount of days?
Happy to stick with the 278 days as per the report.
All right. Would anyone like to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Hearn. Would you like to speak, Councillor Davis?
No, thank you. I think it's all been discussed.
No, thank you, Mr Chair.
Anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? That's carried. Uh, 9.3, the draft Benalla Rural City Council Plastic Wise Policy. Don Testoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As councillors are aware, we have discussed this previously, and we have been working on developing a plastic-wise policy for quite some time. I will largely take the report as read, but I will just focus on two particular points in the report. Bottom of page 24, the discussion has been held quite extensively within the council around how we use waste and our attitudes towards plastic waste. And as we can see, there are 21 responses we received, with the most common single-use plastic items being listed as blank wrap. Packaging, water bottles, cups and lids, straws, food catering containers, plates, bowls and cutlery. We have discussed this largely at leadership as well. I think it is safe to say that the council is fully supportive of adopting a policy that will become a council policy. The conclusion, while there appears to be a general movement in the community towards more sustainable practices, adopting a plastic-wise policy would reinforce the council's commitment to sustainable practices and waste and litter reduction. I think that's probably the headline comment we could actually put with this particular recommendation. So I will draw the recommendation to the attention of the councillors. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions of the CEO? Councillor Hearn.
I would just like to ask, while we're looking at this plastic-wise policy, if there would also be a possibility of looking at, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to look at it, but if we could put forward a proposal of something about plastic shopping baskets. The plastic bags in the supermarkets are to be phased out in 2023, but I think they've just been a money earner for our local supermarkets and globally. So in Benalla, we are an 80 to 90% basket shopping town, so which means that we go into the supermarket normally more than once a week, and we usually just shop with a basket. And I have found, by speaking to the supermarkets, that the baskets are disappearing in the shopping centres. They're actually, shoppers are shopping with their baskets, putting their groceries back in their baskets and taking the baskets home. Now, these baskets aren't that expensive I believe they're roughly around $6 a basket, but I was just hoping that maybe we could look at some sort of policy to add into this plastic wise policy about, I don't know if we do the baskets or how we're going to do it, but could we please look at it?
Thank you, through the chair, thank you, councillor Hearn. It's an interesting one. I know when we discussed it, you first think of it and go, no, but then you sort of think about the mechanics of it. I know when I go shopping, sometimes you do use your own bag as a thing that you actually put the food in. Whilst we probably can't incorporate a concept like this in our particular policy, I think the conversation needs to start. And through this process, we might be able to sort of engage the community on finding ways where we can achieve these types of initiatives. So what I would think through the adoption of tonight's recommendation, whilst it is largely related to our council policy, I think it would be good to get ideas from the community, the council, and even staff on other ways that the community could probably come together and look at initiatives such as this. So I don't think we can put it into this policy, but through the process, I think we gather this information and maybe look at a more broader community program.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Firth?
I was going to move the motion.
Okay, the recommendation is on page 27, moved by councillor Firth, seconded by councillor Hearn. Like to speak, councillor Firth?
Yes, through the chair, just with regards to, this is the start, I think, of a whole lot of policies that we will have to bring forward in the coming years, over the term of this council and possibly following after that, because it's something that everybody understands. We have to get to a position where we treat the earth better, and this is just one of the steps along the way, and I highly recommend it to the council.
Thank you, councillor Hearn.
I'd just like to reiterate what councillor Firth said. I totally agree with what he's saying, and also would just like to add that it is good to for us to start this and show our community that we're as concerned as they are, and since we hold such large gatherings, for us not to use the plastics will be much better.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor O'Brien?
Through the chair, yes, I'd just like to say that this is a great initiative for the community, showing true leadership, really starting here. I know that the community is really wanting to get on the bandwagon with all of this, so this is great. And I'd like to see, I noticed that we're talking about putting more bubblers and water spots around town, but even just water bottle refill stations, lots of places have those, lots of regional towns I've been into, so that might be another initiative that we could look at soon to just sort of try and get rid of those plastic bottles as well in the community. So thanks very much. Great.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? If not, all those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Uh, 9.4, mayoral and council allowance. CEO again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As discussed previously, in accordance with resolution, public submissions on the review of this particular initiative was publicised throughout February. No submissions were received. I will largely take the report as read. Recommendation is at the bottom of page 30, I think that's it.
Yes.
Page 30.
Are there any questions of the CEO on that? If not, would someone like to move the recommendation on page 30? Councillor King, seconded Councillor Davis. Like to speak, Councillor?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Davis. Anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? It's carried. 9.5, Mayor and Councillors' attendance at committees and civic functions. We've all had a chance to look through that. Anyone have any amendments? Councillor Hearn and then Councillor Firth.
Can I please just add on the 9th of March, I attended the Benalla Hall School Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Firth.
Yeah, just note the 7th of April, I did not attend the Communications Advisory Committee, and please just note that I am no longer on that committee. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, through the chair, just a change in mine too. On the 9th of the 3rd, I also attended the P12 whole of school assembly, and on the 19th of the 3rd, I was at the Michael McCormack Deputy PM visit to Benalla for the railway. On the 20th of March, I attended the Harmony Day function down at the foreshore, and I've attended 2 Broombat district community meetings, once on the 11th of the 3rd and again on the 25th of the 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you,
And Councillor King.
Mr Mayor. I did not attend the U3A AGM on the 17th of March, and I was on the 24th of March, the Winton solar farm update. I didn't attend them.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Sorry, let me just check. On the 19th of March, I attended the Michael McCormack Deputy Prime Minister visit to Benalla at the railway station. And I think my fellow councillor Davis also attended that, but it hasn't been noted on his report. And the 25th of March, I did not attend the Tomorrow Today Career Carnival, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr Chair, I forgot to. I did not attend the Tomorrow Today Career Carnival on the 25th of March.
Thank you. I have one addition. I attended the AGM of the Historic Society on the 19th of March. With those amendments, would someone like to move the recommendation on page 35 to report be noted?
Sorry,
Sorry, Councillor.
Mr Chair, I also attended on the 26th of March, webinar, the Implication Matters webinar.
Thank you. With those amendments, would someone like to move the report be noted? Councillor Davis, Councillor O'Brien, would like to speak? Councillor Davis. Councillor O'Brien.
No, thank you, Chair.
Would anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? That's carried. 9.6, council actions pending. There's one we would love to hear about. Please, Mr. Testoni.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Since the last meeting, I've actually followed up, not that I've got a response, but I have followed up with the Secretary of the Department of Transport, Paul Eunice. I have reached out to Paul just to request to have a discussion, because I think it is his department that ultimately makes the decisions on this particular initiative. So I am just waiting on a call back from Paul, and we'll see how we go. But continuing to control.
Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr Chair. This is one that I've just let slide for a long time. But really, now that we're being streamed live, the whole world can actually find out that the question is, how long has this item been on the agenda? And could we get some kind of idea from Public Transport Victoria on how long they suggest it is reasonable to get back to a council with a response? It's ridiculous.
Thank you, Councillor Firth. Would you like to respond? Take that as stated. Okay. Any other questions? If not, the recommendation is on page 37, that the report be noted. Moved Councillor Davis, seconded Councillor Hearn. Speak, Councillor Davis. Councillor Hearn.
No, thank you, Mr Chair.
Anyone else like to speak? All those in favour? That's carried. Item number 10, reports by councillors. Do we have any reports from the councillors? No? I have just a brief one. I attended the North East Waste and Resource Recovery Group meeting earlier in this month, late last month. One item that did come up of interest to us is closed landfills, which we do have a couple in Benalla, and a gentleman called Paul Randall from Randall Environment has done some studies on closed landfills and identified that there could be risks to council, and we need to be aware of where they are and what the risks are. And I'm sure the planning department and the CEO are well and truly aware of where they are and what the risks may be, but it's something to keep in mind. And the other issue that has come up, there's a new chair of that group, which is Councillor Steve Raby from Mansfield. As you're probably aware, this particular group will disappear when there's a new Waste Act and a new authority which will come into force in 2022. But the government yesterday or today have announced that the current board and the current chair will remain until that new authority is established in 2022. So there's a period of time where that group will continue, and hopefully that will morph into whatever the new authority decides to establish in the northeast. That's the only report I have. So recommendation is on page 39, which is no other reports, that the reports be noted. Moved Councillor King, seconded Councillor Hearn. Like to speak, Councillor?
No, thank you, Mr Chair.
Councillor Hearn.
No, thank you, Mr
Anyone
Chair.
else like to speak? All those in favour? It's carried. Notice of motion?
No.
Notice of rescission motion? No. Urgent business?
No.
Confidential business. There's a recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public for the consideration of confidential business item noted above pursuant to clauses
Bye, Simon.
3 and section 66 of the Local Government Act. I'd like to move that. Councillor Davis, Councillor Firth. All those in favour?